Hi, and welcome to today's video where I will be doing an idol dance ranking of the Hyewon members. Hyewon's tendency to shortcut movements does affect her musicality. She often rushes details or finishes movements more quickly than they should be without regard for the rhythm of the music. Hyewon's face is usually blank when performing. It would also benefit her to be a bit more conscious with her eyeline as she often stares in order to focus. I don't have much to say about Hyewon's technique. It would benefit her to train in styles other than female idol dancing to build coordination and a sense of rhythm. Nako's tendency towards loose movements can make her rhythm unclear at times. Nako lacks intensity in her facial expressions and overall performance quality. Nako's biggest strength is her sharp leg angles. She shows potential for good footwork. While her coordination isn't great, her proportions and height make her less awkward than I would expect of someone with her level of technique. The reason why she is placed so low on this list is that I have yet to see an actual isolation from her. Particularly in her torso, Nako's muscle use is completely underdeveloped. Sakura doesn't have a very good grasp of rhythm, and she can fall slightly off the beat. Sakura is quite interesting to me because of how she manages to be very captivating without actually moving her features very much. Instead, she focuses her eyeline and cleverly angles her head to get the most dramatic effect. I would like to see more versatility from her in terms of facial expressions. Though her isolations are quite underdeveloped, Sakura shows a basic understanding of connected movement. She can expand on this once she fixes her stiffness. While they sometimes get lost because of coordination issues, she has relatively good control of her angles. She shows potential for good body locks. I can see her developing a clean dance style based around incorporating stops into her movement. Yuri has a good sense of timing, and is able to accent the rhythm with sharp movements. Yuri has good facial expressions, but she does struggle to keep them throughout the entire choreography. Yuri has really good energy, and that plays a huge role in her dancing. She's showing the beginnings of fluid movement. Her biggest issue is a complete lack of control of her body parts. She dances with her limbs going every which way. Her isolations are still underdeveloped, and she should work on her dynamics as her technique improves. Hyewon's technique is too underdeveloped to build upon her sense of the music, but she has relatively consistent timing. Wonyoung has expressive and consistent facial expressions. Unfortunately, Wonyoung's heightened proportions really get in the way of her dancing at this point. She tends to look awkward and off balance. She can be graceful with her arms and shows the beginnings of good torso locks, but the basics of connection and coordination are not there. Minju has a fairly consistent sense of timing. Minju is a good performer. I can tell that she has an idea of how to make steps look good with her head, face, and eyes. She just needs to do more for it to be engaging on stage. Minju really reminds me of Sana in terms of her body control. They both have very tilted pelvises, good hip isolations, and difficulty controlling the rotation in their legs, interfering with their footwork and general weight distribution. Minju shows a lot of potential for power projection. Although she hasn't gotten the handle on true groove, she does fairly well in bouncy sections of choreography. Her isolations and locks are coming along nicely, so poor coordination is really the last major obstacle for her. She needs to do some training outside of idol dancing to fix her alignment issues. Hitomi has a generally good sense of timing, but she executes everything according to simple counts. This means that she occasionally looks a little off compared to the other members who are correctly doing the choreography to musical cues. Hitomi tends to dance with a blank face. I generally feel like she could relax a bit while performing. In terms of body control, Hitomi is on par with Hyewon. Her isolations, locks, and waves are basically non-existent. However, she has a surprisingly good understanding of shape and is one of the most physically balanced in the group. She has no issues with weird alignment, hip rotation, or coordination. She has sharp leg angles, and this allows her to make awkward transitions look better. Yoonbi has a minor issue of unclear timing. Yoonbi's facial expressions are consistent, but they also tend to be quite generic. This creates a disconnect between the choreography and her stage character. I've never struggled to understand someone's body as much as I have with Yoonbi. There are other inconsistent dancers, but they are always inconsistent in the same way. In Yoonbi's case, it seemed to me like her grasp of technique would suddenly falter depending on the choreography. I'm going to have to break her technique down further than is necessary for other idols because her movement patterns are much more difficult to understand. One of the strangest things about Yoonbi's dancing is her inconsistent chest and hip isolations. For example, she gets the chest isolation here. But 40 seconds later, she's unable to execute that exact same movement. To understand why this is happening, we have to clearly define what an isolation is. To move one part of your body while keeping the rest completely still. As dancers, we tend to fixate on the part that is moving as well as the area immediately around it. However, the part of the definition to take note of is the phrase while keeping the rest of your body completely still. This means that it's not enough to keep your shoulders still while isolating your chest. You also have to make sure your arms, head, legs, hips, and center of weight don't move. And here is where Yoonbi starts encountering problems. Her foundation tends to be really weak. While watching her execute the choreography for Dance Monkey, we can see that she takes a lot of unnecessary steps to keep balance. Here, she's overdoing the legs and pulling her feet back too much each time. Do you see how badly that messes with her upper body executions? It's not that she's doing something wrong with her arms or torso, it's that she's knocking herself off balance by refusing to get fully on her legs. Across her dancing, Yoonbi keeps her legs too far apart to properly transfer her weight. Suddenly, I was able to understand why her isolation seemed so much better in this video. None of the chest or hip isolations required her to be far from a neutral standing position. I also wonder if Yoonbi is actually more comfortable in heels in terms of weight distribution. When you dance in heels, not only do you get to stay more upright, but the heels do some of the centering for you. You have to sort of sit back in your shoes or else you will literally fall over. This prevents Yoonbi from making her stance too wide or taking additional steps while dancing. Another notable issue with Yoonbi's body control is her dead arms in lighter choreography. This is something very common in inexperienced dancers. Looking at Hyewon, we can see that her arms don't straighten when they are supposed to, and it almost looks like she is twirling her fingertips. Now, watch Yoonbi's arms in this clip. Do you see how her arm control is actually quite similar to Hyewon? There's no clarity of line or proper muscle engagement from her back to her fingertips. Yoonbi's dead arms also limit her overall body control. Just as a weak foundation messes with your isolations, underusing your arms for coordination will affect your shape and dynamic movement. A good example of this is house dancing. People unfamiliar with house will perceive it as only footwork, but arm placement plays a huge role. Try to move and turn as quickly as this dancer without using your arms. It's impossible, right? In the same way, Yoonbi will never be able to show more athletic movement without actually using her arms to dance. They can't be an afterthought. This is another reason why she looks better dancing in heels. While you obviously have to use your arms in heel dance, they play much less of a central role in overall coordination. You still need them to balance, especially if the choreography gets more challenging than what Yoonbi is doing here, but you can get away with improper arm control in a way you can't in more dynamic dance styles. The reason why I specified light choreography is because Yoonbi's arm control is better in dances like Boss or Bad. I think Yoonbi carries a lot of tension in her upper body, and in an effort to release that for elegant movement, her arms completely lose proper muscle engagement. That's where the dead look comes from. When the shapes required are simpler and not super extended, Yoonbi can retain the tension in her arms. That's still not great, but she looks better. This next bit is pure speculation, but I'm under the impression that Yoonbi lacks awareness regarding her own body. I think part of the reason why she looks so much weaker at idol dancing compared to some of the other stuff she performs is that Yoonbi is unable to make herself look good on her own. With the dancers above Yoonbi, I see either an emerging or established pattern of movement in a way I don't with her. She shows potential to dance with a heavier style, but I don't think she knows that about herself or can figure out how to match that up with his one's choreography. Unfortunately, she ends up in this weird place of inadequately released tension and poor coordination. Hyewon has the best musicality in Hyewon, and she expresses this by alternating sharpness and flow. Hyewon is a very genuine performer, and that means that the shifts in her facial expressions feel like they truly exist within the music and choreography. Yujin has a really nice quality of movement, and her ability to show different textures goes beyond what I would expect from someone with her level of technique. While they still haven't reached their full potential, Yujin has well-controlled body locks. She has a major issue with alignment throughout her entire body, and this affects her balance. She also has some stiffness through her torso. Yuna is a very energetic dancer, and this can make her look like she is rushing at times. Yuna's facial expressions are inconsistent, but she has moments of great intensity which she conveys with her entire face. Yuna is a very powerful dancer with great torso control, showing well-developed isolations, fluidity, and locks in that area. Although her control over her footwork is still a bit uneven throughout her dancing, she can be very detailed. Yuna has a major issue controlling her arms, and they always look very messy. Her angles often lack clarity as well. She still needs to improve her coordination and control, especially when executing extended movements. Hyewon has good musicality, and she shows an awareness of how to use resistance to add to her phrasing. Hyewon not only has good facial expressions and use of eyeline, but she also knows how to angle her head to elevate her performance. Hyewon has solid full body coordination and is able to show clean lines and angles. She stands out for her understanding of shape, the best in Hyewon on this point. Although she is unable to use groove in her dancing, she has decent strength projection. Her isolations are improving steadily. Hyewon is a very well-connected dancer. Something I've noticed among idols is that good body connection and excessive tension or stiffness tend to go hand in hand, and this is the case for Hyewon. Once she is able to clearly differentiate the texture of different steps by adjusting her level of muscle engagement, her locks will improve as well. Hyewon has a minor issue of rushing, but she has a good awareness of rhythm and musical accents. There are moments where Hyewon shows a lot of potential in terms of performance quality, but she tends to default to a blank face when performing. It's okay for a dancer to let the quality and creativity of their technique speak for itself. focusing on their head and eye line to enhance their performance. However, there still has to be something going on in your face. Hyewon has very well balanced body control, and her lines and angles are incredibly clean. She manages to be precise with all of her movements without tensing up to make this happen. Her transitions are great, and she has impeccable balance. Hyewon fits the profile of a gestural dancer almost as well as Taemin, which gives her dancing an advantage within the K-pop fandom. Also similarly to Taemin, she has some issues adding weight to her extensions. In general, Hyewon's body control is still a bit underwhelming. She has weak locks and poor connection through her body. Her movements also tend to lack impact. While this isn't a huge issue in female idol dancing, it becomes really obvious when she does open style choreography. Hyewon is a well-rounded dancer, but she doesn't really stand out unless she is pushed to her. Yoojin has the best body locks. Yuna has the best torso control. And Hyewon has the best sense of shape. It's difficult for her to set herself apart with clarity of line alone, especially when her performance quality is not up to par. I want to see her challenge herself with different genres or types of movement in the future. Secret Story of the Swan seems to represent a permanent switch in the direction of IZ*ONE's choreography. During the most recent comeback, the dances felt less centered on accommodating Hyewon's particular niche, and more on a type of elegant movement attainable for the rest of the members. While it may be less unique, the group as a whole can execute it a lot better than they could with choreography like Violeta. I personally hope that IZ*ONE continues with this new style, giving themselves time to iron out the wrinkles in the formations.